Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Amen. I'm so excited to be with you and talk about brain health coaching. It is one of the most exciting areas of neuroscience. You know this. Brains run the world. They run the stock market, the local market, huge corporations, mom and pop shops down the street. Brains run governments, although not very well. Schools. This is actually the Fraser Academy in Vancouver, Canada, that teaches our high school course. Brains run churches. This is Saddleback Church, where we planted a huge program that I'll tell you about. Brains run families. It's my family. And you. Yet most people rarely think about their brains, which is a huge mistake, because success in anything you do always starts with an optimized brain. Your competitive advantage or your disadvantage is the actual physical functioning of your brain. But make no mistake, you are in a war for the health of your brain. Everywhere you go, someone is trying to shove bad food down your throat that will kill you early. The real weapons of mass destruction are processed, pesticide-sprayed, high glycemic, low fiber, food-like substances. Food companies use neuroscience tricks to hook your pleasure centers. You know this woman would never be eating a cheeseburger and have a body like the one we're showing you. But food scientists hook pleasure to certain foods that make no sense logically, but make you crave more. You're in a war. Tech companies create addictive gadgets that hook our attention and distract us from our loved ones. Microsoft published a new study this year that said the human attention span is now 8 seconds, where goldfish is 9. This is evolution going the wrong way. And they published another study in 2000 that said the human attention span was 12 seconds. So we've actually lost a third of our attention span in just 15 short years. Beware of the busy manager. This is actually a study from the Harvard Business Review. It said only 10% of managers, high-level people, had both focus and energy. That 20% of them were disengaged, 30% of them were masterful at procrastination, 40% of them were distracted, and only 10% of people had good focus, good energy, and were purposeful in their day-to-day approach to their lives. We are in a war for the health of our brains and our bodies. Alzheimer's disease is expected to quadruple by 2050, and there's no cure for it on the horizon. One of the really horrifying things about Alzheimer's disease is it affects 50% of people 85 years old and older. I want you to think about that for a minute. If you're blessed or fortunate enough to live until you're 85, you have a 1 in 2 chance of having lost your mind. That should frighten people. And the really awful thing that neuroscience has taught us is that Alzheimer's disease actually starts in your brain decades before you have any symptoms. So this woman, so what you're seeing now on the screen are 2 brain SPECT scans. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. It's one of the most exciting, helpful imaging studies that here at Amen Clinics we have pioneered its use in clinical practice. So the image on the left is a healthy scan. full, even, symmetrical activity. The image on the right, where you can see the back half of the brain is deteriorating, is of a 59-year-old woman. And what research tells us is that she likely had negative changes in her brain in her 20s and 30s. So those of you that are waiting to get well until you're sick, you might want to rethink that. Now, why is this important? That Alzheimer's is expected to quadruple, and it happens decades before we have any symptoms. Well, with the recession that happened in 2008, the average age that people retired was 57. Now it is 62. So we are having to work longer and longer. And if you have a brain that's deteriorating, that's going to be harder and harder for you to do. If you knew a train was going to hit you, would you get out of the way? As I saw on the imaging work we do here at Amen Clinics that I'll tell you about, and then learned about how Alzheimer's disease starts decades before you have any symptoms. Then I saw a story in USA Today where two women were on an active railroad bridge with a train barreling toward them. The train actually had a video camera, and you see these two women on this railroad bridge. So they're 80 feet high up in the air, and there's no way off the bridge. And you actually see the train run them over. Now, they didn't die because they were able to lay flat in the middle of the tracks. But you have to ask yourself, what were they doing on an active railroad bridge with no way out? And the story reminded me about how blind most people are to the health of their brains. It's like we're on a railroad bridge and death, disease is coming for you. And most people just don't care enough. They need you to help them care. It's one of the whole reasons I'm so excited about brain health coaching, because you can begin to tell them the risk factors, and then you can give them a way off the bridge. Most people don't know that depression is one of the greatest killers of our time. It affects 50 million Americans at some point in their lives, so almost all of us have either experienced it or we know someone who has. It has increased 400% since 1987. 23% of women between the ages of 20 and 60 are taking antidepressant medication. Depression doubles the risk of Alzheimer's disease in women, and it quadruples it in men. I read this study recently in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and it just horrified me, because what it said is that 50% of Americans, half of Americans, are either pre-diabetic, which means you have a high fasting blood sugar. They're either pre-diabetic or they're flat out diabetic. Now, why is that a concern when we're talking about brain health coaching? Pre-diabetes is associated with brain atrophy. Diabetes is associated with Alzheimer's disease. When your blood sugar levels are high, high blood sugar erodes blood vessels, and it makes them more brittle and likely to break. Why is that bad for your brain? It's bad for every organ in your body, but your brain is the most energy-hungry organ in the body and uses 20% of the blood flow in your body. So even though it's only 3% of your body's weight, it uses 20% of the blood flow. I mean, you can just see what a disaster that would be. My father-in-law got diagnosed with diabetes when he was 55, didn't take it seriously, no matter how much I harassed him to take it seriously, and He ended up losing his legs, losing his eyesight, having heart disease, and dementia. I mean, he just had all the bad things. And diabetes is associated with strokes, blindness, depression, dementia. It just negatively affects every organ in your body. And of course, you know this. Obesity is a serious national crisis. 2/3 of us are overweight, 1/3 of us are obese. Being overweight or obese increases inflammation in your body. Inflammation comes from the Latin word for fire. It's like you have a low-level fire in your body that destroys all your organs. Obesity is a risk factor for 30 medical illnesses, including cancer, diabetes, depression, and dementia. And there are dozens of studies now that report as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. That should scare the fat off anyone. And unfortunately, most people don't think about their weight and their brain. But it's your brain that pushes you away from the table, telling you that you've had enough, or it is your brain that gives you permission to have the third piece of pizza, the third bowl of pasta, the third bowl of ice cream. If you want to lose weight and get really healthy, you got to get your brain right. A long time ago, I coined the term the dinosaur syndrome, you know, big body, little brain. You're more likely to become extinct if you don't get your weight under control. And I remember the day that I thought this up. I'm on a plane for public television from Chicago to Des Moines, and it's a little tiny plane, and I don't really like little tiny planes. And next to me is a woman that's morbidly obese. And, you know, I'm not very big, so, you know, every seat on a plane is first class, but, you know, half of her body was in my seat. And I thought to myself, I'm going to reach over and tell her she didn't want to be a dinosaur, you know, big body, little brain. But I have good brain function. And so the next thought I had in my head was, shut your mouth. Don't say anything. What's the matter with you? That is so rude. And so obviously I didn't say anything. And when I got home from the trip, I told Tana, my wife, about the dinosaur syndrome. And she said, shut your mouth. She said, you have enough people, because I'm a public figure, that hate you. You do not need any more people. And so I let it go until 2 weeks later, I was in Pittsburgh. And I had a meeting with management of GNC. So we were going to do work together. You know, GNC, the supplement store company. And when I got there, I was like so excited and like a little kid until I met their marketing director, Tom, who is morbidly obese. And I just have to tell you, it irritated me. Why? It's a health company. If you do not live the message of your life, how is it even possible that you could be a good messenger? I mean, think about it. If I'm a cardiologist who I'm overweight and I'm smoking, how effective do you think I'm going to be teaching my patients to get healthy? Not very effective. And so, but you know, I'm trying to do business with them. I'm polite until we're at dinner. And we went to the Capitol Grill in Pittsburgh, and everywhere I go, I try to make the right decisions. And it's hard, right? Because you're in a war. Everywhere you go, someone's trying to shove bad food down your throat. And when I saw him order 2 soufflés for dessert, I'm like, Tom, you don't want to be a dinosaur. And he said, what do you mean? Now, for the women that are watching this, I just have one question. Why do you wear pointy shoes? Because underneath the table, as soon as I asked Tom if he wanted to be a dinosaur, my wife, with her pointy shoes, kicked me in the shin. Boom! And she gave me that look, that only your wife can give you, which is, are you stupid? Why did you say that? But Tom was engaged. He's like, but my cholesterol's fine. And I'm like, Tom, you don't understand the science. There's studies that say as your weight goes up, I published 2 of them, as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. He's like, really? I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 42. I said, are you done? He said, what do you mean? I said, you're like the 3rd person at GNC. You don't really want to be the 2nd person, or someday you don't want to be the 1st person. You're like happy. You don't really need your brain, and it's okay if it deteriorates. He's like, no, I'm not done, and it's not okay. And so for that hour, while my shin hurt, we had a very important, very active, engaged discussion. And a month later, he wrote me a letter and said, thank you, Dr. Amen. I wasn't taking my health seriously. Now I am. I've lost 17 pounds. Actually got to see him last year. He's down 80 pounds. And he said, I'm cognitively sharper. My energy's better. I don't have the chronic pain I was living with. And I'm so grateful you told me the truth. One of my favorite Bible verses is John 8:32. It says, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, of course, do it in love. I didn't demean him. I was trying to help him. And then I thought, well, should I put the dinosaur syndrome in one of my public television specials? And Tana was like, no, you're going to get hate mail. I don't always listen to her. I mostly listen to her. And I put it in one of the shows. And I have to tell you, people have written to me, they've lost 100 pounds, 200 pounds. One guy, Steve, lost 400 pounds. You don't want to be overweight. Not only is it not good for your knees and it's not good for your back, it's not good for your brain. Would I get really excited when I think of the devastating illnesses of Alzheimer's disease, depression, diabetes, and obesity? The answer to these problems is not to think of them as separate disorders, but rather as different expressions of the same unhealthy lifestyle that have exactly the same cure. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, for yourself and for the people you love. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better, and I can prove it. And I want you to get better for yourself, but then I want you to teach it to someone else, because it is in the act of giving that you receive. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey to be a brain health coach. And I really think of myself a little bit as America's brain health coach. My public television specials have run more than 80,000 times across North America, and my books have sold more than 4 million copies. I have 10 New York Times bestsellers, and I love what I do. But it was a process to get me there. I am in the middle of 7 children. I'm 3rd, so that meant I was not special at all. I have an older brother and an older sister, plus my dad worked all the time, which meant my mom was a busy woman. Growing up, my dad called me a maverick, and to him, that was definitely not an endearing, loving term. It was not a good thing to him. 1972, the Army called my draft number, and I was trained as an infantry medic, where my love of medicine was born. It's where I learned to be a warrior servant, and I've figured out I love taking care of soldiers. But you know, I didn't like sleeping in the mud or being shot at. That was really irritating. So I got myself retrained as an X-ray technician, and I developed a passion for medical imaging. And as our professors used to say, how do you know unless you look? 1979, I'm a second-year medical student at Oral Roberts University, loved medical school, and someone I loved tried to kill herself. And I took her to see a wonderful psychiatrist. And I came to realize that if he helped her, which he did, it would not only help her, but ultimately it would help her children and even her future grandchildren, as they would be shaped by someone who is happier and more stable. I fell in love with psychiatry because I realized it has the potential to change generations of people. And the last 36 years or so that I've either been in training to be a psychiatrist or a psychiatrist, I have loved every single day. And I've been at war for the health of my patients' sanity, for the health of their jobs, the health of their relationships, and their physical health. 1991. So I'm a psychiatrist for almost a decade. I go to my first lecture on brain SPECT imaging. SPECT is a study that looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. It was presented to us in this lecture at the hospital where I was one of the directors as a tool that could give psychiatrists more information to help their patients. In that one lecture, my two professional loves, medical imaging and psychiatry, came together, and quite honestly, they revolutionized my life. Over the next 25 years, my colleagues and I at Amen Clinics would build the world's largest database of brain scans related to behavior. So with SPECT and another study, we do quantitative EEG. We're almost to 130,000 scans on people from 111 countries. People seek us out from all over the world because we do psychiatry, mental health, brain optimization differently than any other place on the planet, with deep experience in optimizing the brain, but also in treating complex problems. So on the screen, you'll see two healthy SPECT scans. The image on the left is the outside surface. They're called our surface scans. And what you see is full, even, symmetrical activity. The color doesn't mean anything. It's the shape that matters. The image on the right, blue is average activity in the brain. Red is the top 15%. And in a healthy scan, it's typically in the back bottom part of the brain, in the cerebellum. That's really important because the cerebellum has the most neurons. It's only 10% of the brain's volume, has 50% of the brain's neurons, typically on SPECT, the most active part of the brain. So compare a healthy scan to someone who had 2 strokes. You can see the holes of activity. The reason you shouldn't smoke, it increases your risk for stroke. The reason you shouldn't have high blood pressure, it increases your risk for stroke. The reason you shouldn't be diabetic or pre-diabetic, it increases your risk for stroke. The reason you shouldn't do cocaine or have a brain injury, it increases your risk for stroke. Here's what Alzheimer's disease looks at again, and it actually, as I said, starts in the brain decades before you have any symptoms, and it's the back half of the brain that tends to deteriorate in Alzheimer's disease. Or here's a brain of someone who has traumatic brain injury. You can see the right side of their brain is damaged. Your brain is soft, about the consistency of soft butter, and your skull is really hard. You have to protect your brain. Here's a drug addict scan. Looks awful. When I first started doing imaging, I was the director of a dual diagnosis unit. That's a psychiatric hospital unit that takes care of drug addicts. And their scans were so awful. I brought them home to my 4 children and effectively induced anxiety disorders in all 4 of them. You do not want to have a brain that looks like this. Now here, looking at the overactive areas, you can see people have OCD, have too much activity in the front part of their brain, so they can't turn off their thoughts. And this is someone who has post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, where their emotional brain works too hard in a pattern that looks like a diamond. Now, I want to just take a second and brag a little bit. Discover Magazine in January of 2016 had their annual issue of the top 100 stories in science. And our research at Amen Clinics was number 19. We actually published the world's largest imaging study showing we could distinguish between traumatic brain injury, TBI, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, with very high accuracy. Why is that important? Their treatments are radically different. If you are emotionally traumatized, your emotional circuits activate. Where if you're physically traumatized, what you see are decreases in blood flow, decreases in perfusion, because you're damaging blood flow, you're causing scar tissues, and it goes along with decreasing. And without imaging, it's really hard to know. But we are so excited to be honored by Discover Magazine. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but a map is worth 1,000 pictures. A map tells you where you are and gives you directions on how to get to where you want to go. So if you don't properly assess your brain, you can be lost. You can actually hurt people. Now, a long time ago, I realized not everyone can get a scan. So based on thousands of scans, I developed a series of assessment tools to help you know about your brain and the brains of the people you will coach. The imaging changed everything in my own life personally. When I first started doing imaging in 1991, I got so excited about the technology, I scanned everybody I knew. I scanned an aunt who had a panic disorder. I scanned a friend who had temper problems. I scanned my 60-year-old mother, and her scan was actually very irritating because up until that time, actually since then, out of the 130,000 scans we've done, she has a stunningly beautiful brain. Now, why is that irritating? I scanned myself. I was 37 at the time. My brain didn't look nearly as healthy. It was bumpy. I played football in high school. I had meningitis when I was a young soldier. And even though I've never smoked and never did drugs and don't drink, I had a lot of bad brain habits. I was overweight. I didn't sleep. I was chronically stressed. I ate bad food. I drank diet soda like I was addicted. Even though I'm a double board certified psychiatrist, so I'm board certified in general psychiatry and child and adolescent psychiatry, I was top of my class in neuroscience in medical school. I had no affection for the organ that runs my life. How stupid is that, right? I mean, how crazy is that? But you know, the reason people don't care about it is you just can't see it. You can see the wrinkles in your skin, or you can see the fat around your belly, and you can do something when you're unhappy. But I just didn't care until I saw it. Now, if you knew my family, besides the fact I have a stubborn, semi-irritating father, we're very competitive, right? Being one of 7, and my mom is a champion golfer. She's been her club champion many times. So we're competitive. And so I saw my brain, and then I saw my older mother's brain at 60. I'm like, no, I'm going to have a better brain. And so I developed this concept I call brain envy. See, as a psychiatrist, I realized Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of most of your problems. He was about 2.5 feet too low in your body. It's brain envy. You have to care about the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. And 20 years later, when I scanned myself again, my brain is fuller, fatter, healthier, and at 60, One, I think every bit as fast as when I was 30, but now I have the wisdom of age. So I actually don't want to go back, but I don't want to get old with disease. I want to be as sharp as I can for as long as possible. You're going to hear me say this again. Brain aging is much more about your habits than your age. So we did a study here at Amen Clinics on 8,000 patients. And what we saw is your brain just gets less and less and less active with age. So for example, here's a typical 55-year-old brain. You can see the wrinkles, just like somebody's got a 55-year-old face. Here's an 82-year-old brain with deep wrinkles, just like an 82-year-old face. But here's an 82-year-old, my friend Doris Rapp, who's got a stunningly beautiful brain. Why? She still works, she still exercises, she still eats great. She's serious. You can too, but you have to be serious. How exciting would that be for you to be able to have a brain, you look like that, but also to coach people so that they could improve their brain. I want to tell you some of the big lessons I've learned from imaging. The first thing that we learned, and it's going to be really simple, is that your brain's involved in everything you do. How you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. So you can see on the screen, me and Muhammad Ali were boxing. Not really, he's posing me. Do you think boxing is a good brain sport? No, it's a bad brain sport. But we learned your brain is the organ of judgment, personality, intelligence, and every single decision you make. Every single decision you make is dependent on the physical health of your brain. One of the other big lessons we learned is that when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled, you are much more likely to have trouble in your life. With a healthy brain, people are happier, physically healthier. Why? Because they make better decisions. Wealthier. Why? Because they make better decisions. They're more successful in anything they do, whether it's with their physical health, in their relationships, at work, whatever. It has to do with the moment-by-moment decisions you make, which comes from the physical functioning of your brain. If your brain's unhealthy, for whatever reason, you had a head injury, you smoked, you drink too much, you had Lyme disease, you were exposed to mold, you had a near drowning episode, you have diabetes, hypertension, people are sadder, sicker, poorer, less successful in everything you do. You want to be successful in your life? You have to focus on the physical functioning of your brain. And you've probably, like me, read success books by Tony Robbins or some of the other people, and none of them talk about what is really foundational for success, which is the physical functioning of your brain. Another lesson we learned that I'm so excited about is your brain is the most amazing, energy-hungry organ in the universe. So even though it's only 2% of your body's weight, it uses 20 to 30% of the calories you consume. And as I said before, 20% of the blood flow, 20% of the oxygen that you use. If you take a piece of brain tissue, the size of a grain of sand, it has 100,000 neurons in it, or brain cells in it, and about 1 billion connections, all talking to one another. So think of how special your brain is. One source said that the brain has the storage capacity of 6 million years of the Wall Street Journal. Another principle that we learned that's critically important is your brain is very soft, about the consistency of soft butter. And it is housed in a very hard skull that has multiple sharp bony ridges. Brain injuries matter. In fact, if you said, Dr. Amen, what's the single most important thing you've learned from looking at all these images? Mild traumatic brain injury ruins people's lives, and very few people know about it. Hidden brain trauma is associated with alcoholism and drug abuse. I did a study with my friends at Sierra Tucson, a large psychiatric hospital in Arizona that's famous for their addiction treatment programs. 44% of the new admissions to their hospital had histories of a significant brain injury. Homelessness. Did you know that according to a couple of studies, 58% of the homeless men in Toronto and 42% of the homeless women had a significant brain injury before they were homeless? Traumatic brain injury is associated with dementia, with depression, with anxiety attacks, and suicide. It's also associated with ADD and learning problems. I want to tell you a story about Aaron. He's the CEO of a large corporation. Handsome, good-looking, and works out, really healthy. And all of a sudden, he started having panic attacks. And he went to his family doctor, and in a 10-minute appointment, he left with a prescription for Xanax, a benzo that lowers brain activity. They use it for people with anxiety disorders. I hate it. And also Prozac for depression. But he just got worse. He lost his motivation and actually started having suicidal ideation. And then he'd seen me on TV, so he called the clinic. And when I saw him and looked at his brain, I went, "When did you have a brain injury?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Your brain looks hurt." And he said, 2 weeks before my first panic attack. I'm like, "And nobody asked you? What happened?" He said, "I was mountain biking and my front tire going down a hill hit a big rock and flipped me over and actually broke my helmet. And it was on the left side, right?" He said, "How'd you know?" Because you could see it on the scan. And he said, "Well, why didn't the other doctor ask me that?" It's because he wasn't looking at your brain. And as we rehabilitated his brain, he just did phenomenally well. I was so excited for him. You can rehabilitate brain trauma, but not if you don't know. Another thing that we learned from the world's largest brain scan database is there are many things that hurt your brain. Poor decisions, we talked about that. Brain injuries, we talked about that. Drug and alcohol abuse, we talked about that, except we didn't say much about alcohol. You need to stop thinking of alcohol as a health food. People who drink every day have smaller brains. Brand new study. People who drink every day also have an increased risk of cancer. Do you think chemotherapy is good for your brain or not good for your brain? Not good for your brain. Obesity, we talked about that. Not exercising. If you're not moving on a regular basis, that's bad for the blood flow in your body. And I already told you that your brain gets 20% of the blood flow. So if you're not doing things to keep your blood vessels toned and strong, and exercise produces something called nitric oxide that helps keep your blood vessels nice and round. So, I mean, as we age, right, we already talked about this, your brain gets low in activity, your blood vessels get low, and your skin begins to fall off your face, right? I mean, that's just what happens. If you exercise, you increase nitric oxide, and it keeps your blood vessels patent, nice and round, and working well. If you have a bad diet, In fact, we call it the Standard American Diet. So see what that stands for, SAD. So if you eat the SAD diet, you're more likely to get depressed and have dementia. If you don't sleep well, in fact, if you get less than 7 hours of sleep, it's associated with lower all blood flow to the brain, more bad decisions. There's a fascinating military study where soldiers got 7 hours of sleep at night. They were 98% accurate on the range. If they only got 6 hours of sleep, they were 50% accurate on the range. Think about that. Just that difference of an hour. If they only got 5 hours of sleep, they're like 35% accurate on the range. And if they got 4 hours of sleep, they're only 15% accurate. Actually, I have a friend who's a sleep researcher. He said in interviews with employees, you should ask them how much they sleep. And if it's less than 7 hours, you shouldn't hire them because they're more prone to mistakes. Sleep apnea, where you snore loudly, stop breathing at night, chronically tired during the day, which is rampant in the United States, is associated with dementia. And we actually see it on scans. You see the overall low blood flow, especially in the back part of the brain. Nicotine, obviously not good because it constricts blood flow to the brain. And anything that constricts blood flow to an organ prematurely ages the organ. Excessive caffeine. Now, if you have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, it's not a big deal. If you have 4, 5, 6 a day, it's a big deal because it's prematurely aging your brain. If you're diabetic, we talked about that. Hypertension. As your blood pressure goes up, blood flow to your brain goes down, and it's actually associated with brain atrophy. Being hypertensive is the second leading cause of preventable death in the United States. Smoking is first, then hypertension, obesity is third. If your labs aren't right, that's bad for your brain. One of the things we learned, if you have low vitamin D levels, if you have low or high thyroid levels, if your testosterone is low, it's not only bad for your libido, it's bad for your strength, your vitality, your memory, and your mood, whether you're a male or a female. For females, low levels of estrogen are associated with dementia and depression. Low levels of progesterone are associated with anxiety, insomnia. If your C-reactive protein, that's a measure of inflammation, is high, more associated with depression and dementia. If your homocysteine levels are high, it's another measure of inflammation. You're more likely to have heart disease and dementia. Chronic stress damages the brain, so all of us should be on a stress management program. Environmental toxins like mold or infections like HIV or Lyme or Epstein-Barr or herpes are associated with brain problems. Depression, as we talked about, increases your risk for dementia, but so does PTSD, bipolar disorder, and attention deficit disorder. One of my expertise through the years has been in ADD or ADHD. And why does it increase the risk for dementia? Because it's increasing all these other risk factors like drug abuse, like head injuries, because of the impulsivity and like overeating. If you have an unhealthy peer group, it increases your risk of brain problems because you become like the people you hang out with. So huge studies, longitudinal studies, saying if your friends are overweight, if your family's overweight, if your friends have dementia, if your family has dementia, you're more likely to. And it's not your genes, it's in the habits that cause your genes to be skinny jeans or not skinny jeans. And if you don't know about your own brain health, that's bad for your brain because you may not know that you're on the railroad bridge and the train is coming for you. So as I think about coaching people to brain health, it's you need to know where they're at. Where are their risk factors? So this is a great checklist to say, well, let's talk about your health and your habits. Let's talk about your health and your habits. Now, we teach this in our high school course. And invariably, we have a whole week on what hurts your brain. Invariably, a 9th grade boy raises his hand and says, how could you have any fun? And I got to scan Heidi Fleiss, you know Heidi Fleiss, the famous Hollywood madam, and Dennis Rodman for Celebrity Rehab, when I appeared on Celebrity Rehab. And Dennis, when he saw his very damaged brain, said, well, how can you have any fun? And so I played a game with him that I usually play with the 9th graders called Who Has More Fun? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? I said, who gets the girl and gets to keep her because he doesn't act like a jerk? I said, Dennis, you lost Carmen Electra. How does one lose Carmen Electra? And we talk about with the kids, it's like, well, who gets into the college they want to get into? Who makes the most money? Who takes the coolest vacations? Who makes the most purposeful, meaningful difference in life? The person with the good brain or the person with not the good brain? And then most people get it. With a better brain, you have more fun. You have more meaning. You have more connections. You have more life. So, many things that hurt the brain. One of the other big lessons we learn, well, there are many things that help your brain, like appropriate anxiety. I used to think my job as a psychiatrist was to lower people's anxiety until I realized the people who go to jail actually have low levels of anxiety. They actually have slower heart rates, lower sweat gland activity. You need some anxiety so that when you think, oh, I'm going to have the 4th piece of pizza, you're like, oh, maybe that's not a good idea for me. Or if it's raining, it's like, oh, I shouldn't be driving at 100 miles an hour in the rain. So some anxiety is absolutely critical. New learning is fabulous for the brain. When you learn something new, your brain actually makes a new connection. So people who dropped out of school or who are in jobs that do not require lifelong learning have a higher incidence of dementia. People who stay in school or who are in jobs that actively keep them engaged have a lower risk. They have healthier brains. So you always want to put new learning into your life and the lives of people you coach. Exercise, physical exercise. So we just talked about mental exercise, physical exercise. So I think of weights because the stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease. Walking because it increases nitric oxide and help keep your blood vessels healthy. And waltzes, which is just a metaphor for coordination exercises. Dancing, table tennis, coordination exercises are awesome because they work out your cerebellum, that bottom part of your brain. Great nutrition, absolutely critical. It's one of the most important things you'll ever do because your body makes itself new every 5 months. I mean, every cell in your body is making itself new. It's turning over their membranes and their nutrients. And if you have a fast food diet, you're going to have a fast food mind. Food is medicine, or food is poison. Just a critical intervention to get people's food right. And trust me, it's not everything in moderation. I hear that all the time. I think everything in moderation is the gateway thought to illness. Cocaine, arsenic in moderation, no, that's a bad thing. And I'm also not a believer in cheat days because many of these foods are made purposefully addictive. You would never tell a smoker to have cheat days, or an alcoholic they could have cheat days. I want to help coach you and help you coach others to put in a nutrition plan that is nutritious, but also delicious. In our brain health coaching program, there is no suffering. It's always about abundance. It's just abundance of the right things. You want to help people get to the right weight, right? Because they don't want to be dinosaurs. Healthy friends. So here's the short course. The fastest way to get healthy is to find the healthiest people you can stand and then spend as much time around him or her as possible. Sleep. You have to make it a priority. See, for me, I'd rather not. I love my life. I'm busy. I'm always doing things and torture my staff repeatedly with all the ideas and things I have. But I realize if I don't get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, my cravings will get out of control. I won't make good decisions. I'll be too anxious or too stressed. So I purposefully get in bed till I'm getting at least 7 hours every night. Ant-free thinking. A long time ago, I coined the term ANT, automatic negative thoughts. It's the thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. And if you're going to really stay healthy, John 8:32, know the truth. The truth will set you free. So I'm not a big believer in positive thinking. I'm a big believer in accurate thinking. And whenever I feel sad, mad, nervous, out of control, I write down my thoughts and I challenge them. I question them, not to make them positive, just to help them be accurate. If I think my wife never listens to me. You know, left unchallenged, that's a really negative thought. And oh, by the way, it gives me permission to sort of be a jerk to her. But if I write that down, I'm like, well, that's not true. She listens to me all the time. I mean, maybe she's not listening to me now because she didn't sleep, or a 12-year-old stressing her out, or, countless reasons. But you don't have to believe every stupid thought that goes through your head. Meditation, so powerful. We published 3 studies on a Kundalini yoga form of meditation, showed it increased blood flow to the front part of the brain, helped memory. If you just did it 12 minutes every day for 8 weeks, dramatic positive effect. There's also a very simple loving kindness meditation that has been shown to decrease hatred, decrease prejudice, increase positive emotions, and decrease pain. Learning from your mistakes. Mistakes, if you pay attention to them, are always your best teacher. But you have to pay attention to them, and we'll teach you how. Targeted supplements. I'm a huge believer in supplements. In fact, I created BrainMD Health, which is our supplement company, because when I looked at the brains of my patients, often on certain medications, I didn't really like it. It really was not boosting the health of their brains. So I created a whole group of supplements. So I think of it as natural ways to optimize brain function. And knowing about the health of your brain, it's absolutely critical, because if I know my brain's not quite right, I'm going to get serious about making it better. Another thing we learned is that certain brain systems are involved in certain behaviors. So like the prefrontal cortex, forethought, judgment, impulse control, organization, planning, forethought, empathy, learning from the mistakes you make. Your temporal lobes, memory, mood stability, temper control. Your parietal lobes, they track things in space. They also sense what happens in your body. Your occipital lobes involved with vision, and your cerebellum, as we've been talking about, coordination. So certain parts of your brain do certain things, and problems in certain systems tend to give you specific problems. So for example, if I damage my frontal lobes, I'm going to have problems with judgment, impulse control, organization, planning, forethought. If I have problems in my temporal lobes, I'm going to have memory problems, or maybe temper problems, learning problems. If I have problems in my parietal lobes, I might get lost more easily. In my occipital lobes, I'll have vision. Cerebellum, I might have coordination. And we have a whole part of the education that we give you that in a fun way, we teach you about different brain systems teach you what they do and then what happens when things go wrong. So yes, it's neuroscience, but it's in a very practical way that can help you get more love in your life, be more effective manager at work. It's just critical for you to know a little bit about the organ that runs your life. Another thing we learned is that how we diagnose people is not good. That giving people the diagnosis of depression is sort of like giving them the diagnosis of chest pain. That all mental health issues have multiple types. That most problems, concussions, obesity, ADD, depression, addictions, they're not single or simple disorders. And so, for example, I've actually written whole books on ADD is not one thing, it's 7 things. Anxiety and depression, they're not separate disorders. They run together almost 2/3 of the time, and there's 7 different kinds of anxiety and depression. There's 6 different types of addicts, so don't put everybody in the same program. That's silly when you think of it from a neuroscience standpoint, and all overeaters are not the same, which is why there are thousands of diet books, but very few neuroscience diet books. And what we've discovered is there are 5 types of overeaters. So for example, on the screen, you'll see 2 people with depression. One has really low activity, the other has really high activity. Do you think we do the same thing for them? Of course not. But if you don't look or you don't assess, how would you ever know? Here are 2 autistic patients. On the top, both those images, really high activity, way overactive, where on the bottom, it's a damaged, toxic-looking brain. Same treatment? Of course not. The other thing we've learned is imaging completely changes the discussion around mental health. No one really wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as abnormal or defective. In fact, I remember it was 1980 when I told my dad I wanted to be a psychiatrist. Now, I already sort of hinted that he was difficult for me. Growing up, his favorite phrase began with a B, and the other word was an S. That was his favorite phrase. And his second favorite was no. So stubborn, oppositional, and he always said exactly what was on his mind, whether it hurt your feelings or it didn't hurt your feelings. And so in 1980, I fall in love with psychiatry. I told you that. And I told him I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and he got mad at me. And he said, Danny, why do you want to do that? You want to hang out with nuts all day long? You want to be a nut doctor? Literally, that's what he said. He said, why don't you want to be a real doctor? And it hurt my feelings. But I understand 35 years later that psychiatrists often don't act like doctors because they're not looking at the organ they treat. But nobody wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as abnormal or crazy or defective. But guess what? Everybody wants a better brain. What if mental health was really brain health? And the scans have taught us that lesson over and over. And when we get people excited about brains, when we get them to the place of brain envy, their moods are better, their anxiety's less, their memories are better, learning is better, they're more motivated, they're more plugged in, more connected. So what if mental health was really brain health? And that's where brain health coaching is so important. You don't have to be treating somebody's mental illness. If you optimize their brain health, in fact, the emotional problems they have are going to get better, but all you're doing is planting brain health into their lives. I'm so excited to be able to teach you this. The most exciting lesson from our imaging work, the one that keeps me going every day, is you are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. I can prove it. You can make it better even if you've been bad to your brain. And we've proven it in NFL players who had really troubled brains, We've proven it in large groups. I'll tell you the story at Saddleback Church. Our program is now in thousands of churches around the world, and we've proven it in thousands of patients at Amen Clinics. So let me tell you a little bit about how we prove it. So Amen Clinics did the world's first, the largest study on active and retired NFL players. Our story started in 2007 when we saw Anthony Davis, the famous Hall of Fame running back from USC. He's called the Notre Dame Killer because in 1972 he scored 6 touchdowns against the University of Notre Dame. In fact, the students at Notre Dame hated him so much that they put his pictures on the walkway so they could walk on him on the campus. And in 1974, he scored 4 more touchdowns against them. Well, Anthony played 8 years in the NFL, and in 2007, he came to see us because his memory wasn't good, he was more irritable, and he's like, "Doc, I see a lot of my friends, they're having memory problems." And so I put him on the protocol we've been using and developing at Amen Clinics over the last 25 years. And within a couple of months, he's like, "Doc, I'm better. You know, my energy's better, my memory's better." And he helped me go to the Retired NFL Players Association, and they co-sponsored my first study. And we now have almost 200 players. It was at a time when the NFL was the kindest thing I can say is they were in active denial that they had a problem. 1994, the NFL formed its concussion committee, but by 2009, they'd never sponsored a brain imaging study. Instead, they studied rats, literally. They put little tiny helmets on rats and would whack them in the head repeatedly, throw them down laundry chutes, and then they would kill them and then dissect their brains. And they went, "Well, we can't tell if playing football causes long-term brain damage." And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just get active and retired players? In fact, the commissioner, Roger Goodell, in front of Congress in 2009, said the NFL didn't know if playing football caused long-term brain damage. They were studying the issue. And I loved when Maxine Waters, the congresswoman from California, metaphorically smacks the commissioner and says, "Acting like you're studying traumatic brain injury in football is a conflict of interest. It's like the tobacco companies saying they are studying lung cancer." And I love that because it's exactly true. The problem with the NFL's position is if you don't admit you have a problem, you can't do anything to solve it. As a psychiatrist, I've seen that with patients for years and years. If they don't admit that there's a problem, well, they can't get the right help and fix it. If businesses are having trouble and they don't admit that they're having a problem, well, they can't fix it. If a couple is having problems and one or both of them don't admit that there's a problem, they can't fix it. Brain damaged players were left without help or hope. So in 2009, with Anthony Davis and the Retired NFL Players Association, we did the world's first and largest study on active and retired NFL players. The imaging changed everything. We published our first study on 100 players, showing high levels of damage in 96% of players. It was published in the Journal of Neuropsychiatry and Clinical Neuroscience, a really highly respected journal. But you know, after we started our study, I mean, yes, we were interested in answering the question, does playing football cause long-term brain damage? There is no question that that in fact is true. But here at Amen Clinics, our goal is not to go, "Oh, you have brain damage, I'm sorry." Our goal has always been, well, can we make it better? So after we started our study, we put a second arm of the study, which was a brain rehabilitation program. So it was a practical program where we taught them all the principles we teach in the brain health coaching course. And so we taught them about brain health, and then we put them on very specific supplements in a very specific way. For example, here's one of our players. Duval Love, who is an offensive guard for the Los Angeles Rams for 12 years. So that means total between high school, college, and the pros, he played 20 years. His brain just looked awful. And Duvall's obese. And he'd been arrested. And he was depressed. And he was having a lot of trouble in his life. On the rehabilitation program that we did, that I teach in this course, 80% of our players showed high levels of improvement. And we published this in the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs. 80% of our players showed improvement, especially in memory, attention, mood, sleep, and motivation. I mean, how exciting is that? You are not stuck with the brain you have. And I've proven it in people with brain damage. And odds are you have not been nearly as bad to your brain as they were. So here's Duvall Love's before and after scan. Pretty exciting. You can see the improvement. And oh, by the way, he lost 110 pounds. You are not stuck with the brain or the body you have. We can make it better, and we can prove it. Here's one of my favorite stories of Freddie Dreyer, who is a Los Angeles Ram, who later became an actor on the show Hunter. At the age of 64, he said, with the treatments, I have replaced a part of me that over time had slowly slipped away. While going through the program, I noticed mental energy and thinking speed I had lost. There is new neuroscience that is so exciting. We're actually doing collaborative research with researchers at UCLA that are showing that not only can you slow cognitive decline, that you can actually reverse cognitive decline. So other people are saying you are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. We can prove it. Research with Dale Bredesen from UCLA took 10 people with Alzheimer's disease, or this thing called mild cognitive impairment, which means you're on your way to Alzheimer's disease, and on a very specific program, the same one that I'm going to teach you how to do and teach others how to do, that in 6 months, 9 of the 10 were improved, 6 of them actually went back to work. I mean, how exciting is that? You are not stuck. If you are troubled, you can make it better, but you need a very specific program to make it happen. And then, 5.5 years ago, I was at my own church one Sunday morning. And I just finished writing my second book on the connection between physical health and mental health. It was called The Amen Solution, The Secrets to Being Thinner, Smarter, and Happier. And I was so excited because it was a Sunday morning, and we're getting ready for church when I finished my book. And when we got to church, I told Tana, I said, why don't you take Chloe to Children's Church and I'll go save us seats. And I walked toward the sanctuary and saw hundreds of donuts for sale for charity. And it just really irritated me. I mean, you're literally in a war. Even when you go to get your soul fed, someone's trying to kill you. Right around the corner from the donuts, there was bacon and sausage cooking on the grill, and now I'm even more irritated. And before I walked into the sanctuary, there were hundreds of hot dogs they were cooking for after church. And I'm like, really? And then as I sat down, the minister started talking about the ice cream festival they had the night before, and I'm furious. You heard it said, for those who have eyes, let them see. I was seeing mass destruction all around me. I'm trying to do something good for myself and for my family, and I'm just being offered bad choice after bad choice after bad choice. So when my wife, Tana, found me in church, I was typing on my phone. She hates that. She thinks of my phone as the other woman. And she gave me that look that only your wife can give you, like, why the hell are you on that thing in church? Don't you know you're going to hell for that? And so I showed her my phone, and showed her what I was typing. Go to church and get donuts, bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. They have no idea they are sending people to heaven early. Save them, then kill them. This is not the plan. And so during that service, I have no idea what the pastor said. I prayed that God would use me to change the culture of food at church. And while I'm praying that prayer, I'm thinking to myself, what a stupid prayer. How is that going to happen? You're a psychiatrist that looks at people's brains, that does television. But no lie. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Rick Warren. You might know Pastor Warren. He's the senior pastor at Saddleback Church, one of the largest churches in the world, with many campuses in Southern California. There's also a campus in Hong Kong, one in the Philippines, one in Brazil, one in Berlin. He is also the author of our generation's best-selling book, The Purpose-Driven Life. And apparently, Pastor Warren, the Sunday before, when I was saying the prayer, or 2 Sundays before, had baptized 800 people. And about halfway through, he realized everybody's fat. How could that be? And I'm fat. And I'm a terrible example to them. And he called me and he said, I saw you on public television. I heard you talk about the dinosaur syndrome. I wasn't going to get healthy for my heart because I just don't care about it. And to live longer, I don't really care about that either. I'm going to heaven. And to be sexier, he said, quite frankly, Dr. Amen, I'm already sexy. But when I heard you say, as your weight goes up, the size and function of your brain goes down, now you had my attention because my brain is my influence. And so together with my friend Mark Hyman, Rick and Mark and I created something called the Daniel Plan, which is a church-based program to get the world healthy. It's based on 5 pillars: faith, why do you care? Food, fitness, focus, it's brain health, and friends. We get better together or we get sick together. The first week, 15,000 people signed up. The results were spectacular. The first year, the participants lost over £250,000. They reported better energy, focus, creativity, sleep, and mood. Many of them reported reductions in stress, blood pressure, blood sugar, sexual dysfunction, and many medications. The space shuttle weighs about 250,000 pounds. I mean, the church lost a space shuttle. How exciting is that? And the really exciting thing is people got better, their children got better, their grandchildren got better. The stories have been amazing. And now it's literally being done in thousands of churches around the world. One prayer, a massive shift. But we need so many more coaches to help. There's so many places. Do you know that the world's busiest McDonald's per square foot is at the Cleveland Clinic? Think about that. How crazy is that? It's sort of like going to donuts and someone's trying to kill you. Or some of the worst food I've ever seen is in schools for school lunches. Or they're in hospitals. We just don't think. I want you to help people think. You can make a difference in the lives of thousands, tens of thousands of people with just a good plan and focused effort. And then here at Amen Clinics, which I am so proud to be a part of. We have 6 clinics around the country, 3 on the West Coast, Bellevue, Washington, San Francisco, Costa Mesa in Southern California, 3 on the East Coast, New York, Washington, D.C., and Atlanta. We see about 4,000 patients a month, and our outcomes, which means our effectiveness, is better than anyone I know who publishes their outcomes. So we actually have done a formal outcome study on 5,000 cases. So on average, our patients are complicated. They have 4.2 diagnoses. They failed 3.3 providers, 5 medications, and at the end of 6 months, 75% are better. This is a treatment-resistant group. 75% are better across all measures. If we actually are the ones that treat them, it's 84%. Quality of life goes up in 85% of our patients. Why? Because we have a very specific method. I told you about this. I just have to tell you about it again because I'm so excited that Discover Magazine highlighted our research. So I wanted to get you really excited about brain health. And I wanted to teach you it's not hard. None of this is hard. It just takes a very specific method to plant in your life and then in the lives of those you care about, of those you love, of those you serve. Let me just reiterate a few things. 51% of the US population at some point in their life will suffer from a mental health issue. So if you don't think there's a market for this, make a list of 10 of your friends. And 5 of them are taking medicine or supplements, or they should be. But what if mental health was really brain health? When you look at medical illnesses, so what's the population? What's the population need? I already told you 2/3 of us are overweight or obese. 50% of us are pre-diabetic or diabetic. 60% of us are hypertensive or pre-hypertensive. There's so many people you can help. So people, families, businesses desperately need brain health coaches to get and stay on track. So why am I doing this? Because there are just very few professionals who are trained to do this. It's not taught in traditional professional schools. In fact, the traditional methods are outdated. Most organizations still serve awful food. They don't even think about it. And there's a huge professional and personal opportunity to do good for you and for the people that you serve. So I've created a course. We call it the Brain Health Coaching Certification course, where we teach you how to plant brain health in your life and the lives of those you love, to change people's lives in a powerful, reproducible way. It'll also improve your personal, clinical, work, or school outcomes. The training that I'm including in this course is actually the training I use for my own medical staff here at Amen Clinics. I will teach you the Amen Clinics method and the algorithm we use in depth, and also show you how to build your own practice. The components of the Brain Health Coaching Certification course starts with the Brain Health Coaching course, 15 modules, 10 hours, and then there's actually a live event that we filmed, 3 days, called Opening the Mind, Healing the Brain, 18 hours. We then give you our atlas, Images of Human Behavior, our clinician's brain science toolbox. So I use all of these in teaching our medical staff. In addition, as bonuses, you'll get my audio program, Natural Ways to Heal the Brain, because quite frankly, there are very few people anymore that really want to take medicine. They want to know what's a natural alternative. Another fun one I did on hormones, because they're just so critical to brain health. Change your hormones, transform your relationships. Another one on addictions, Unchain Your Brain, the audio course that I taught with Dr. David Smith. You may know him. He's the founder of the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. He's the father of addiction medicine in the United States. And I'm going to teach you how to create a brain healthy program, brain healthy treatment program. But you can plant it in schools. You can plant it in an addiction program. You can plant it at work, where we give you all the tools. So let me go over these in more depth, because I'm very excited about them. So the Brain Health Coaching course, 15 modules. We talk about the 9 principles of changing your brain and changing your life. Really simple, but very powerful when you begin to plant them in your life. And then I teach you about different brain systems, what they do, what happens when things go wrong, and how to fix them. So very personalized prescriptions for what individuals need. And then I do a whole module on subtyping, ADD, anxiety, depression, addictions, obesity. Talk about the big lessons from imaging, the Amen Clinic's method and how we help people always in 4 circles: biological interventions, psychological, social, even spiritual, which is why do you care? What's important to you? We then talk about supplements and how they can help your brain and your body. This very interesting concept called boosting brain reserve, how to reverse the aging process. Talk about exercise, nutrition, the gut-brain connection, the science of self-control. It's all about the science of decision making, how to kill the ants, innovative treatments. What's new and exciting in neuroscience? Aging and decreasing your risk for Alzheimer's disease, creating brain-healthy communities, and coaching others to brain health. I'm so excited. It's what my physicians go through. And then in Opening the Mind, I actually teach you a lot about the latest neuroscience, about how to actually look at the scans and what they mean. Because it's through looking at the scans we learned all these great lessons. So actually go over 100 of them. We'll talk about child issues, adolescent issues, adult issues. We'll talk about relationships, ethics, legal issues. In the Atlas, I mean, the pictures, like I said, worth 1,000 words. And the images are so cool. You look at strokes and traumatic brain injuries, ADD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, a whole little chapter on PMS, there's a whole big chapter on substance abuse, before and after treatment, which is the hope. I mean, you know, that's what I'm offering people is you're not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. We have pictures. The clinician's toolbox is really important because it has assessment tools and questionnaires that you can use. It also, in our questionnaires, there are outcome tools and treatment algorithms. It's very helpful. These are actually our own office forms that we use here at Amen Clinics. And then as a bonus, natural ways to heal the brain, where I talk about natural ways to help people's attention, anxiety, mood, sleep, pain, and memory issues. Change your hormones, transform your relationships. Talk about thyroid, stress hormones, estrogen, progesterone. And even though this is clearly in a master's or doctorate level university course, I just guarantee you it's a lot more fun because I figure out how to talk in ways that are easy to understand. Unchain Your Brain, powerful information for understanding and treating addictions. And if you don't work with addictions, this will help you in everything you do, and how to create a brain-healthy treatment program with questionnaires, targeted treatment plans, great handouts. You can do groups at work using these handouts, or groups in schools using these handouts. In addition, what we decided to offer, because this is a very important part of how we help people at Amen Clinics, is we're going to give you access to our online program called Brain Fit Life for a year. And the cool thing about Brain Fit Life, besides the fact that it's mobile, so it's online, mobile, you can strengthen your mind anytime, anywhere, it starts with a deep assessment of your brain. So we actually use BrainFit Life Web Neuro. So BrainFit Life Web Neuro is a 35-minute computerized, scientifically based assessment where we will measure 17 areas of your cognitive, emotional, and intellectual functioning. And then based on how you score, we will give you exercises in the form of fun games to optimize your brain. And BrainFit Life is something you can introduce to all of your community. In addition, we'll tell you, based on the questionnaire, well, what's your brain type? There's 16 types. This is the questionnaire that I made when I realized not everybody can get a scan. Now, if you have complicated patients or you have complicated clients, please send them to one of our clinics. We're happy to treat them. But that's not the point of the Brain Health Coaching course. The point of it is so that you have access to these tools where you could plant it in people's lives. And you can also get people to sign up for BrainFit Life so they know their brain type and they also can test their brain. We give people targeted recommendations based on their brain type. So what supplements, what diet, what specific exercise, what games might work for this type. We'll also teach you how to kill the ants. We'll work on your motivation. There are meditation audios for you. There are hypnosis audios for you, sleep, anxiety, weight, peak performance, hypnosis ones that I do for you just as if you were in my office. There's a brand new section on brain-enhancing music by Grammy Award-winning producer Barry Goldstein. It's made with special tones that help people with focus, relaxation, creativity, intuition, sleep, and they're beautiful. In addition, we help you with brain-healthy nutrition. There are over 300 brain-healthy recipes from my wife, Tana. We also do webinars on BrainFit Life, and we have a community of support. All of these things and the benefits if you become a brain health coach is your skill is better. I mean, you're going to have something that will revolutionize how you help your patients, your clients, your businesses. You can earn up to 28.5 continuing education or continuing medical education credits if you're a mental health care provider or physician. When you pass the competency test, you'll receive a beautiful certificate from us for your wall. There's also ongoing education through our webinars, professionals-only newsletters, and phone trainings. Licensed medical and mental health professionals will be eligible to be listed on the Amen Clinic's National Referral Network. You'll also get a 20% discount as a member on our clinical evaluations at Amen Clinics, including SPECT. So if you wanted to come, that alone is worth nearly $800. For your immediate family members, your staff, clients, they'll get a 10% discount, so nearly $400. By being a member of BrainFit Life, which you get as part of this, you get a 15% discount on supplements. So why would you want to do this? And how is this different than, there are not very many brain health coaching certification courses, so we'll start there. This one is also based on our deep experience. It's based on the world's largest database of brain scans related to behavior. It's been tested in tens of thousands of lives. It's effective and it's comprehensive. And quite frankly, one of my best gifts is taking really complicated concepts and making them easy to understand. So I just need your time. I need your thoughtful attention. And by the time you're done going through the materials in this course, you will love your brain. You will have changed some of your own habits, and you'll be able to teach other people how to do that. And I know that that's our competitive advantage. It's our love for this. It's our deep experience. It's our high success rates. We're passionate. And a long time ago, I figured out how to teach people in simple English. It's not hard. You just have to stay with it. We have great testimonials. One of my favorite is from Dr. Earl Henslin. He says, "I hope you join the team of professionals such as myself in the first major paradigm shift in the fields of psychiatry and psychology to occur in over 100 years. I and the healthcare professionals associated with me have greatly benefited from being intimately involved in the application of neuroscience to everyday practice, from being able to learn from Dr. Amen and his staff." Dr. Henslin is just amazing how he uses this in his clinical practice, and he's grown his clinical practice because of it. I was recently in Atlanta, and I was in our Atlanta clinic, and an 80-year-old woman who is a therapist came up to me, and she said, "You know, I just love the coaching materials you have, and my practice has grown 30% because I'm more effective." And what's the best marketing tool? I tell this to our staff all the time. What is the best marketing tool? You doing effective work, because then people get better and they want to share their experience. From Jack Felton, who's a marriage and family therapist, who's an expert in addiction medicine, I found the Amen Clinic's Brain Health Coaching Certification course remarkable and refreshing. As simple as it sounds, the principle of if your brain works better, so will you, has turned the lives around of the hundreds of clients I've worked with over the last decade. Julie Banta said, "I am so grateful to have implemented the Amen Clinic's brain health coaching methods, which has given me access to incredibly helpful tools and resources, and best of all, a comprehensive and effective way to help my clients feel better." And Terina Piccarello, "When I began to integrate the Amen Clinic's brain health coaching methods into my work with clients, especially those struggling with addictions, I experienced significant and profound results. That is the best feeling ever for me as a clinician. Hope is huge." So I know you want to know the cost of this program. But the first question I want you to ask yourself is, what does it cost you to have a brain that doesn't work right, that is not working at its best? What does it cost you? What does it cost your loved ones? What does it cost your clients? Underachievement, demoralization, not living up to your potential. That's expensive. School failure, multiple failed college attempts is really expensive. Job failure, multiple job changes, absenteeism, getting fired. Relationship problems, divorce is really expensive. Legal problems, lawyers are really expensive. Failed attempts at therapy, failed medication, having to send kids away to residential treatment, which is really expensive, drug treatment programs, or even being in the hospital. So I want you to ask yourself, what is the cost of not getting the help that I need? Let me give you an example. Joe Polish is a very famous marketer. And when he first came to see me, he had damage to the left side of his brain. You can actually see it. He had trouble being in consistent relationships, which was emotionally painful for him. After just 7 months, you can see how much better his brain is. After 5 years, his brain is normal. His business is better. His relationships are better. His energy is better. His memory is better. And he will tell you it has increased his revenue dramatically. One of my favorite stories is Steve Arterburn, who is a famous author and media personality. And It's late at night when I get this email, which was bizarre, but very fun for me. It starts with my rental confirmation number for Aruba wasn't illicit, and my hotel confirmation number, and he's listening. I'm reading this going, why do I want to know this? He said, the reason I know is that I'm supernaturally able to remember things that I would never even tried before. And they don't go away. My productivity and creativity is off the chart. I'm able to connect with my wife in ways I've never experienced, and sexual intimacy is another area of peak performance. Now, what would that be worth? Or one of my favorite stories is from Cheryl. She said, my brain was broken. Because of your work, I went from being homeless and hopeless, without the custody of my 3 children, to being an RN on a busy surgical trauma unit in a stable relationship. But most importantly, I'm able to be a good mother to my children. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. I proved it. It's the stories that drive me, that have kept me excited for so long. And I want to teach you how to do it as well, so that you get these stories in your life. It just, brightens your day. It makes you happy. It gives you meaning and purpose. We would love for you to be part of our community of brain health coaches, that you really know the material and you know how to give it to people you love and to the clients that you serve. The value of all the components of the Brain Health Coaching Certification course is well over $2,000. The tuition is just a fraction of that. Click the button below. We would love for you to be part of our community of brain health coaches, wherever you are in the world. I know this can make a difference for your life and your brain and the lives and brains of those you love and the people you serve.